Hi! So the reason for this video is that I tend to be asked pretty frequently, how do you become a fashion designer? What do you have to study? Do you have to have a fashion degree? And maybe what can you do if you can't afford a fashion degree but you still want to become a fashion designer? So my usual answer to that is that a great way to get a job in the fashion industry is nepotism and also being born rich. But if none of these options are for you, then I also like to tell my story to show that there's more than one way to become a fashion designer, even if you don't have a traditional design education, and even if you come from a very different background. So I'm going to do exactly that now. I'm going to explain how I became a fashion designer and pattern maker, and I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of being mostly self-taught versus going to fashion school. Okay, the TLDR of this part is that I didn't study design in the traditional way, but I still became a fashion designer. I had my own lingerie brand, which was fairly successful, and now I work full-time as a freelance fashion designer, pattern maker, and 3D designer. My background, however, has very little to do with fashion design. I have a degree in history of art. I then went on to do a master's in comparative studies, and then I started a PhD in a topic related to cinema. And that's when I stopped. I quit my PhD, and a year later, I was working in a fashion design studio. And when I tell the story this way, it sounds super cool, right? Like in a year, I became a fashion designer. But actually, the reality is a little bit more complicated. If we go back to when I was doing my master's degree, by the end of the program, actually I wasn't very happy about it. So I found myself one day very tired of writing academic paper after academic paper, and they seemed to be pretty pointless. So I realized I was craving something more creative to do, mainly as a hobby. So I found a local association in Barcelona that were doing classes about all kinds of different topics, and initially I wanted to sign up for either photography or watercolor, but in the end, the only class that was available and matched my schedule was something called Basics of Pattern Making, Create Your Own Skirt. Suddenly, I was transfixed about the possibility of making my own clothes. It was something that had never crossed my mind before. So I signed up and was so excited that that very same day I went online to see how do you make the pattern for a skirt. And I drafted the pattern, and then I went to a fabric shop, I bought some fabric, I cut the skirt, and I hand sew them. And I like to point out that at this point in my life, I barely knew how to attach a button. So the result, as you might expect, was awful. The skirt, the fit wasn't bad, actually, it was surprisingly good, but the workmanship, as you might call it that, was less than desirable. I ended up unpicking the skirt and repurposing the fabric for something else. But the important part was that I discovered that I could do something with my own hands, and I discovered a new way of being creative that was very different from what I had done until that point. So when that short course I have signed up about pattern making started, I really, really loved it. And after it ended, I spent pretty much all of my free time looking online how to create my own clothes, like learning online about pattern making, drafting, how to use a sewing machine, and all of that. And it was around that time when I started the first year of my PhD, and also when I discovered Emerald Erin's blog. And if you don't know Emerald Erin, she's amazing. I'm going to link all of her socials, her website, her Instagram, everything, because she is the best person you can go to if you want to be inspired about making your own lingerie. So I discovered that, and it blew my mind. The concept of creating myself something that is as complex but at the same time so delicate as, for example, a bra, it seemed so fascinating to me. So I wanted to create my own lingerie, but the problem was that there wasn't a lot of information online at the time. So I kind of became a little bit obsessed because I really wanted to know how to do this thing, but I really couldn't find how. So there started a process of trial and error and practicing every week. Emerald Erin had a bra a week challenge where you made a bra every week. So I started making that. I created an Instagram page where I started posting my creations, like both the clothes that I was making for me, but also the lingerie. And I actually started to get some questions about whether I would like to sell my designs. And that wasn't something that I took seriously at the time, but it kind of made me think that this could be a viable job, like a viable career. So when the time came to sign up for my second year of PhD, I was fed up with academia and I wanted to quit because I wanted to give fashion design a chance. I wanted to try to study fashion and become a professional designer and pattern maker. I started searching for options and I found out a school in Barcelona that had a fashion design degree, and actually it had a specific module dedicated to lingerie and corsetry. So it was perfect for me. I really wanted to do that, but there was the tiny problem that it was super, super expensive. So I looked at other options and I ended up enrolling on a 2-year vocational course in pattern making. The course itself was very, very technical. It was very focused on the pattern making side of the industry. And the only subject that we had that was related in some way to design was one in which we were supposed to learn how to create cats in Illustrator, but the teacher was super lazy, and the first day she came to class and told us to open CorelDRAW and to look for tutorials online about how to use it. So it wasn't a success, and also it's not a reflection on the rest of the teachers of the course. Like the other teachers were very professional and very nice. It was just this one, but it was very unfortunate because it was the only area in which we were going to learn something more specific to design, not just pattern making. But anyways, I ended up learning a lot about pattern making in general. I didn't learn anything new about making lingerie because the course didn't cover that, but I continued learning on my own and practicing. But one of the great things of this course is that in the second year it included an internship. And actually I was very lucky because I got that internship in the first year because there was a design studio that needed someone like ASAP, and one of the teachers recommended me. So I ended up doing my internship in that design studio. And actually, during that summer, they hired me to be working there part-time. And from there, I kept working. I started my own lingerie brand where I made pretty much everything, like from designing to doing the patterns to making the garments. But that's a story for another video. And then after I moved here to Sweden and the pandemic happened and all that, I decided to focus more on freelancing. So now I'm a full-time freelance designer and pattern maker, and I work with brands pretty much all over the world. And by the way, a side note, remember that fancy design school that I really wanted to go but couldn't afford? It turns out that now I work there. I teach the lessons for lingerie and corsetry in the master program that they have. But now that we are at the end of this part of the story, how can we reflect on it? What can we learn from my experience? So my key takeaways of my learning journey are basically two. First, that you don't need to spend a small fortune in order to get a fashion education. And second, that you can get a start in fashion at any age and coming from every background, but you need to learn a lot by yourself and especially learning by doing. And I also want to make something clear about my story. I worked really hard, but I also was very lucky because I was in the right place at the right time when that design studio really needed someone to intern for them. So sometimes there are things that you really have no control over. But I think that in the same way that Picasso said that inspiration has to find you working, I think that luck also has to find you working, or at least doing something towards that goal that you have, so that you can be in that right place at that right time. And having had that experience of being both self-taught and also learning in a course, in a more like structured course, I wanted to talk about what a traditional fashion degree can give you versus what you can learn by yourself. So traditional fashion school. When I talk about traditional fashion school, I mean these fancy design schools like Parsons, the London College of Fashion, the FIT, one of those places where you can get a fashion degree that costs quite a lot of money, but also looks really pretty in your CV. For me, the main advantage of these schools is that you can get access to a lot of connections that are very hard to make on your own. And trust me on that, because I'm an introvert and I hate networking, and I know how hard it is to make connections. In the fashion world, people tend to know each other, and having a door open to that is very important. So in a fashion school like one of those, you get teachers that are in touch with a lot of industry professionals, and sometimes they even organize events where industry professionals come to the school and see the work that the students are doing. So that kind of things are very nice. And you can also get recommendations from your teachers if you want to get an internship and things like that. That is super valuable. But also you can get that in educations that are not necessarily a fashion degree. Like for example, even in my case, my school wasn't a big design school or anything, it was vocational education, but I got a recommendation from a teacher, and that's what allowed me to get my internship. So the connections part is something that can be really worth it to invest in if you're thinking about getting into fashion. However, going to one of these fancy schools and having the access to a lot of connections potentially is not a guarantee that you are going to get a job, because I know people who have gone to these schools and still they didn't get a job straight after graduating. And of course, the main disadvantage of one of these super fancy schools is that they are expensive, like capital letters expensive. In fact, I've seen a summer course in the London School of Fashion that costs several times more than what I paid for my vocational education course. And if you're thinking about doing a whole fashion degree, it's in the thousands of dollars, euros, pounds, whatever you're using. So that's quite a barrier of entry, I would say. But I still think that if you have the money and this is worth it for you, if you're willing to take the risk and you want this high-end education very focused on design and experimentation and things like that, then this might be what you're looking for. But what happens if you don't happen to be the heir of a small fortune? Then maybe you'd like to consider other options. Nowadays, it's relatively easy to learn the basics of pretty much everything online. There are free tutorials everywhere and courses, and in my case, most of what I know about making lingerie, I learned on the internet. That's why I think that self-learning is a great option, especially if you don't have the funds to spend on a fancy design degree. However, I recommend that at some point of your self-learning journey, you do take some sort of structured course. It doesn't have to be expensive, or it doesn't have to be long. It can even be like a series of one-on-one online lessons, something like that. But I think it can help you a lot because of these reasons. First, because learning the basics on your own can be relatively easy, but at some point you're going to want to get some advanced knowledge. And that's not so easy to find online for free. That's the kind of knowledge that an experienced teacher can help you with. And the fact that you can have someone to ask questions and help you with specific areas that you want help with, that can contribute to improve your skills much faster and in a much more efficient way. Second, you can also get connections in a course like this. It doesn't have to be a design school, it might be a local sewing class in your neighborhood, but you may get to know amazing teachers and colleagues and create a community with them and help each other. And having a supportive community of like-minded people around you, it's so important in your journey, whatever you are that you're learning and whatever the job that you want to get, and even in any stage of your professional career, because those are the kinds of connections that really help you grow, that might open the door to a new job opportunities or might help you with specific problems that you're having or things that you don't know how to do. Sharing skills, sharing knowledge, and helping each other is invaluable, and any opportunity that you have to create that, please take it. Third, structure and accountability. When you're learning by yourself, it's really easy to get sidetracked with a lot of different projects or a lot of different areas or whatever you're learning to do. And also you may start a lot of projects but never finish them because you get distracted with other new things. So enrolling in a course with organized lessons can help you give some structure to what you're learning, and it also keeps you accountable because you're likely to have to do some projects for the course, have some kind of homework and daily practice. And that habit of practicing your skills daily, consistently, and applying them to projects is something that is going to help you immensely. I believe that this kind of like hybrid model in which you are self-learning, but also you can complement that with some courses that are specific to the areas in which you want to improve, it's an option that can work for a lot of people. Maybe not for everyone. I'm not saying that this approach is perfect, but I think it achieves a good balance between being affordable and accessible and also allowing you to get a high level of skill. And as a kind of side effect, I believe that the skills that you learn just by learning by yourself are things that can provide value in pretty much every area of your life, your professional life or personal life, because you learn how to be consistent and disciplined and how to think outside the box sometimes and solve your own problems by yourself because you're on your own, and if you don't, you're pretty much fucked. So we come to the end at last. Some final thoughts about all this is that I don't think there's a right path for everyone. I can't tell you what's right for you because I don't know you, but I do think that these are two options that you may consider, and I have shared my personal experience and how it went for me with the self-learning hybrid approach. So I hope that's valuable for you, and I hope this wasn't too boring to listen to me rambling about my story and all that. So let me know in the comments what kind of experience you have either with self-learning or with going to a traditional fashion education school, because I have a lot of thoughts about fashion and the fashion industry and gatekeeping and how difficult it is to break in. So I would love to discuss all that with you and have a little conversation in the comments. And if you like this video, you can do all the YouTube stuff like and subscribe, or just don't. It's okay with me. Like, there are better things in life than that. But either way, let's see you soon in the next video.